I'll show you how to change this into this using Fusion 3D Motion Graphics in DaVinci Resolve. It's not as difficult as you may think. Let's get started. We'll begin by creating a Fusion composition. Right-clicking in the Media pool, I'll select New Fusion Composition from the pop-up menu. I'll rename it 3D Demo. I'll set the duration to 15 seconds and click Create. You can double-click on the new Fusion clip in the Media pool to open it, or right-click and choose Open in Fusion page. All we have is a Media Out node. I'll move it to the right. The first thing I'll do is bring in the clip of the girl. I'll open the Media pool and drag the clip down. I'll press Function F2 or F2 in Windows to rename it. I'll name it Girl. I'll load it into Viewer 1 by pressing the 1 key. Our first order of business is to remove the background. I've kind of cheated, as this is a very easy scenario. It's not a green screen, but the next best thing. The background color is solid and of fairly uniform color and brightness, and contrasts well with the subject, so removing it will be easy. A 3D keyer should work well. The girl node is selected, so I'll press Shift Spacebar and type 3D keyer in the search field. I'll press Enter. I'll load that into Viewer 1 by pressing 1. Starting in the bottom right corner, I'll draw a line up towards the top of the frame. Pretty easy. Let's check the quality of the mask. I'll load the Alpha channel in Viewer 1. Clicking up here, I'll select Alpha from the menu. Black represents areas of transparency. Ideally, black should be pure black and white's pure white. I'll increase the zoom level to 200%. You probably can't see it, but there's the faintest wisp of white to the left of the girl's head. This will compromise transparency and let some of the old background show through. To fix it, I'll expand the Matte Finesse section in the inspector. I'll click-drag the clean black field to the right slightly. That did it. There are some gray areas in her hair. To fix that, I'll click-drag the clean white field slightly to the right as well. That's good enough. There's still some gray around the edges, but that's okay since it's just a few loose strands of hair. I'll switch the color channel back in. I'll inspect the edges of the girl for problem spots. Looks good. The only issue is some of the old background color is spilling onto her hair. To remove that, I'll move the Despill slider in the inspector to the right. I'll change the zoom level back to fit. I'll play the clip through and see how it looks. I don't see any problems. However, I think she's looking too bright and flat. I'll add a brightness contrast node to address that. With the 3D keyer node selected, I'll click on the brightness contrast node icon in the Node Editor's toolbar. I'll load the brightness contrast node into Viewer 1 by pressing 1. If I don't load it into the viewer, I won't be able to see the changes I make. I'll adjust the gain, lift, gamma, contrast, brightness, and saturation sliders. I just want to make her stand out more. Okay, that looks good. It's now time to enter into the 3D realm. Everything we've been doing up till now has been strictly 2D. To enter the 3D realm, we'll have to attach the girl clip to a 3D object. On the far right of the Node Editor's toolbar, there's a selection of 3D tools, beginning with Image Plane 3D, Shape 3D, Text 3D, Merge 3D, Camera 3D, Spotlight, and Renderer 3D. We'll be using all of these except for Text 3D. To bring the girl into 3D, I'll use an Image Plane 3D node. I'll rename it Girl 3D by right-clicking on it and choosing Rename from the menu. I'll load it into Viewer 1, and there she is in 3D space. Using the mouse wheel, you can maneuver about. You can also hold down Shift while using the mouse wheel. And holding down Command, Control, and Windows lets you use the mouse wheel to move in and out. I'll right-click on Perspective in the bottom right of the viewer and select Settings, then Reset Defaults to reset the viewer. I strongly suggest you do this before moving on to the next step. Next, we need to add a Merge 3D node. A Merge 3D node is not like the regular Merge node. It provides a stage 3D objects can share or inhabit together, along with a camera and lighting, just like a real-life stage. Without the Merge 3D node, any 3D objects we create will be stuck in their own separate 3D worlds. Pretty useless. So let's add a Merge 3D node. I'll drag it down from the toolbar. I'll connect the Girl 3D node to it. I'll press 1 to load the Merge 3D node into Viewer 1. As you can see, there's no change. It looks the same. Next, I'll add a Renderer 3D node. This will always be the last node in any 3D realm you create. It renders the 3D realm into 2D. With the Merge node selected, I'll click the Renderer 3D node icon in the toolbar to add it in. I'll load it into Viewer 2 by pressing 2. There's the girl in a sea of transparency. I'll select the Merge 3D node. Now, let's add a 3D camera. This will allow us to frame the shot as we'd like. We can move the camera around to different angles, move it in and out, etc. We can also animate it to do all those things. I should point out that the clip of the girl was filmed with a stationary camera. If the camera had been moving in any way, panning or zooming or on a dolly, we would need to use a camera tracker. If we don't, any 3D objects added to the scene would not be moving with the camera and would look out of place. This, however, would add layers of complexity, but I am planning to cover such a scenario in a future video. Okay, let's add a camera by clicking the Camera 3D icon. The girl has disappeared from Viewer 2. Let's find out why. I'll right-click on Perspective in the bottom right of Viewer 1 and choose Top. Now we're looking at the scene from above. That's the camera you see there. I'll select the Girl 3D node. And there's the girl. If you're not seeing the same thing, make sure Move Mode is enabled in the viewer by clicking this icon in the top left. I'll select the camera again. They're in the same place, so that's why we can't see the girl. With the camera node selected, I'll grab the blue arrow and move the camera back. And there's the girl in Viewer 2. I'll switch to the Transform controls in the inspector by clicking the Transform tab. I'll click-drag the Z field in the translation group to the right to move the camera out. Adjusting X moves the camera from side to side. Adjusting Y moves it up and down. I'll double-click on the X and Y labels to reset them. The rotation group can be used to pan horizontally or vertically and to tilt. I'll reset all those. If I move too far out, the girl begins to float in space. I'll move the camera back in. I'll lock the camera into place by clicking the lock icon in the upper right so I don't accidentally move it. I'll rename the camera 3D node camera. I'll zoom out in Viewer 1 by holding down Command, Control, and Windows and using the mouse wheel. There's the camera. I'll select the girl 3D node. Now you can see where the girl is. Let's bring in the next 3D object. From the media pool, I'll bring down this image of a spiral. It's just a PNG file I downloaded from the web. I'll rename it the Candy Spiral. I'll bring down an image plane 3D node and attach the spiral to the green material input of the image plane node. I'll rename it Spiral Disk. I'll attach it to the Merge 3D node. It's merged into the girl, but anyway, you can see how the Merge 3D node provides a space for 3D objects to be in together. I'll select the Transform tab in the inspector and move the Z translation field to the right to bring the disk out in front of the girl. I'll adjust its scale to make it smaller. In Viewer 1, I'll right-click on top in the bottom right and select Camera. This gives us the view of our camera. The spiral disk node is selected, so I'll grab the disk in the viewer with the mouse and position it. I can't see the whole frame, so I'll close the media pool so there's more room. To move objects using the viewer, Move mode must be enabled. This icon in the upper left should be highlighted. To enable it, click on it with the mouse. In the inspector, moving the Z translation field to the left, I'll move the disk back. I can now move it behind the girl. I'll bring it back in front and adjust its scale again. I'll leave it there. Let's take a moment to discuss the different viewer modes. On the top left of the viewer, there's 3 icons. We're already familiar with Move mode, which is this icon. But Rotate and Scale modes are also available. I'll enable Rotate mode. Now you can use the on-screen controls to rotate the object. I'll undo all that by double-clicking X, Y, and Z in the rotation group in the inspector. Let's enable Scale mode. Using the left and right arrow keys, I can adjust the scale of the selected object. You can also click-drag on the red handle. I'll set it back to Move mode. I'll right-click on Camera in the bottom right and select Top. You can see the camera and the disk, but not the girl. If I hold down Command, Control, and Windows and select the Girl 3D node, you can see all 3 objects at once. You can use this technique to help you navigate around in the 3D realm. Let's add another object to our 3D vignette. I'll bring in another spiral graphic from the media pool. I'll rename it the Cone Decoration. I'll load it into Viewer 1. I don't like this color, so I'm going to adjust it by adding a color corrector node. I'll click the color corrector icon in the node editor toolbar. I'll load that into Viewer 1 so I can see the changes I make. First thing I'll do is move into the blue color range. I'll adjust saturation to brighten it up. I'll adjust contrast. And I'll try adjusting the gamma. I'll adjust the contrast a bit more. Now let's attach this to a Shape 3D node. I'll click the Shape 3D node icon in the toolbar. I'll slide it over to the right to keep things looking tidy. I'll change its name to Cone. In the inspector, I'll select Cone from the Shape drop-down. And let's attach it to the Merge 3D node. That's looking pretty ragged. To improve it, I'll move base subdivisions and height subdivisions in the inspector all the way to the right. I'll switch to the Transform tab and scale it down. I'll switch Viewer 1 to Camera. To do that, I'll first select the Merge 3D node and load it into Viewer 1, and then right-click on top in the bottom right and select Camera. Again, I'll close the Media Pool to make more room. I'll select the Cone node and position the cone by moving it in the viewer. It's in front of the girl. I'll move it behind her by adjusting the Z translation field in the inspector to the left. I'll adjust its position and maybe scale it a bit. Okay. The next object is a cube. I've already attached a JPEG which will serve as decoration. In the inspector, I'll change shape to cube. I'll go ahead and attach that to the Merge 3D node and position and size it as before. There's the cube in the upper right of Viewer 2. The last object will be a sphere. This will be a little different from the others. First, I'll change its shape to sphere. I'll load it into Viewer 1. Let's scale it down so we can see it better. It's not smooth around the edges. In the Controls tab in the inspector, I'll slide base and height subdivisions all the way to the right. Instead of using an image file for decoration, I'll use what's called a shader from the Effects library. So let's open the Effects library. Under Templates, and then Fusion, I'll select the Shaders category. There's a whole bunch to choose from. I'll use Glass Dot. I'll attach it to the Sphere node. With the Glass Dot node selected, let's make some adjustments in the inspector. First, I'll adjust the Face-On Strength slider. That gives it more of a shiny plastic finish. Now let's try adjusting the Dot Bump Softness slider. That's given it a smoother appearance. I'll change the diffuse color. I'll attach it to the Merge 3D node and position and size it like I did with the other objects. Next, let's add some lighting to light up our scene. Before continuing, I'm going to select Timeline Proxy Resolution from the Playback menu and set it to half. This will improve performance. By default, lighting is disabled, so we'll have to enable it. To do that, I'll select the Renderer 3D node, and in the inspector, I'll enable both lighting and shadows. Enabling shadows will allow our objects to cast shadows. Everything has gone completely black in Viewer 2 except for the sphere. That's because there's no lighting as yet. I guess the sphere is still visible because of the Glass Dot shader we added, but no matter. Lighting can be added to the existing Merge 3D node, but I like to use a second one for a less cluttered node tree. I'll do some rearranging to make room for it. I'll select the existing Merge 3D node and add another one. The simplest light to use is the ambient light. It lights up everything without you having to make any adjustments. I'll press Shift Spacebar to add one. I'll turn up the intensity in the inspector. Pretty easy. However, ambient light doesn't produce shadows. I'll detach it from the merge node for now. We'll reattach it later. Let's add a spotlight. A spotlight is the only type of light that allows objects to cast shadows. I'll select the second merge node and go ahead and add one. In Viewer 1, I'll change the view to top. There's the spotlight. To help see its location, select another object node, and then select the spotlight node again. It should disappear and reappear, helping you pinpoint it. The spotlight node is selected, so in the inspector, I'll select the Transform tab. Click dragging the Z translation field to the right. I'll slowly pull the spotlight back. Things are beginning to light up. I can also click on the spotlight's blue arrow in Viewer 1 to pull it back. Now let's move the spotlight to the left so the light is shining across our scene. I'll click drag the X translation field to the left. In Viewer 1, you can see the spotlight moving. Let's go to the Controls tab in the inspector and adjust the cone angle slider. Increasing the angle broadens the light and decreasing it narrows it. Back to the Transform tab. Now I'll click drag the Y rotation field to the left to pan the spotlight to the right. I'll move it further in by adjusting the Z translation field to the left. I'll pan the light a bit more to the right with the Y rotation field. That's created some nice shadows. I'd like the shadows to have a soft edge. By default, shadows are sharp-edged. This improves performance, but looks unnatural. In the Controls tab, I'll expand the Shadows category. At the very bottom, I'll select Constant from the Softness dropdown. The amount of softness can be adjusted with the Constant Softness slider. I'll leave it where it is. And let's lower the spotlight's intensity. I'll add a second spotlight. First, I'll select the Merge 3D node. In Viewer 1, the second spotlight is in the same position the first one started out in. I'll pull on the blue arrow to bring the light back. I'll pull it to the right this time. And I'll move it in a bit so we'll be shining the light at a sharper angle. In the Transform tab, I'll use the Y rotation field to pan the light. In the Controls tab, I'll adjust the cone angle and lower the intensity a bit. And let's give the shadows a soft edge as before. Now let's reattach our ambient light node. I'll lower the intensity. And let's give the light a warm color. Okay, that looks nice. One last note about lighting. If you have more than one merge 3D node, as we have here, and you attach lighting to both nodes, the lighting in the upstream merge node will not be visible downstream. To change that, select the upstream merge 3D node, and on the Controls tab in the inspector, put a check mark in Pass-Through Lights. This will allow lighting to pass through the downstream merge 3D nodes. Now let's add a background. First, I'll attach the Renderer 3D node to the Media Out node. I'll load the Media Out node into Viewer 2. As mentioned before, the output of the Renderer 3D node is 2D, so we're back in the 2D realm. From the media pool, I'll bring down a JPEG that will serve as our background wallpaper, so to speak. I'll rename it Wallpaper. Since we're back in the 2D realm, I'll take a regular merge node and place it between the Renderer 3D and Media Out nodes. When the pipe changes to yellow and blue, I'll release it. The output of the renderer is attached to the yellow background input of the merge node. We want it attached to the foreground, so I'll connect it to the green foreground input instead. Viewer 2 has gone dark, but no worries. Now I'll connect the background node to the yellow background input of the merge node, and that should restore our picture. Our view is restored, but what a mess. I did this on purpose because this is bound to happen to you, but rest assured it's easy to fix. First of all, the main problem is that the resolution is off, not to mention that dark rectangular area. Let's fix the dark area first, since it's the easiest. It's caused by the brightness and contrast adjustment we made earlier. I'll select the brightness contrast node. In the inspector, I'll place a check mark in Pre-Divide Post-Multiply. That fixes that. Now for the resolution problem. I'll load the Renderer 3D node into Viewer 1. In the top right of Viewer 1, you can see that the resolution is 1920 by 1080. In Viewer 2, the resolution is 1920 by 1630. The culprit is the background wallpaper image. I'll load that node into Viewer 1. As you can see, its resolution is 1920 by 1630. To get back to our proper resolution, I'll bring in a background node. I'll rename it Resolution Fix. In the inspector, I'll select the Image tab. Looking at the width and height fields, we can see that its resolution is what we want. If it isn't for you, just remove the check mark from Auto Resolution and adjust the width and height fields to what you need. I'll bring in another 2D merge node. I'll attach the Resolution Fix node to the background input and attach our background wallpaper node to the foreground input. Now I'll attach the second merge node to the background of the other merge node. And voila, it's fixed. Now let's animate our 3D objects. I'll enable Single Viewer mode. Let's start with the spiral disk. I'll select its node. First, let's make sure the playhead is at the beginning of the clip by pressing Command left arrow or Control left arrow in Windows. In the Transform tab of the inspector, I'll right-click under Rotation and select Animate Rotate Group from the pop-up menu. That's added keyframes to the X, Y, and Z parameters. Now let's move to the end of the clip by pressing Command right arrow, Control right arrow in Windows. I'll adjust the X, Y, and Z fields. Let's position the playhead at the start by pressing Command or Control left arrow. Let's play it back. The disc is moving ever so slowly. Okay, I'll stop that. Command or Control left arrow to position the playhead at the start of the clip again. I'll select the cone node and animate it. Again, Transform tab and right-click under Rotation and select Animate Rotate Group. Command or Control right arrow to move to the end of the clip. Adjust the X, Y, and Z fields however you wish. I see the cone doesn't have a bottom. I'll select the Controls tab and put a check mark in bottom. Back to the Transform tab to finish our animation adjustments. Let's go to the beginning and play it back. Okay, I'll go ahead and animate the cube and sphere and see you in a second. Okay, I'll play the clip back a bit so you can see all the objects animated. Now let's add some animation to the background. I'll select the second 2D merge node we added. I'll add a waviness node by pressing Shift Spacebar. I'll play the clip. In the inspector, I'll adjust the speed and strength sliders. All right, I'll stop that. Finally, let's animate the camera too, just to show how it's done. Let's have the camera slowly moving to the right. First, I'll select the first Merge 3D node and load it into Viewer 1. I'll re-enable Double Viewer mode. Make sure the perspective is set to top. Now I'll select the camera node. I'll set the playhead to the beginning of the clip. In the inspector, I'll first unlock the camera. In the Transform tab, I'll right-click under Translation and select Animate Translate Group. And I'll also right-click under Rotation and select Animate Rotate Group. I'll move to the end of the clip. In Viewer 1, I'll pull the camera to the right. I'll click-drag the Y rotation field to the right to get the girl back into the center of the frame. She's tilted, so I'll click-drag the Z rotation field to straighten her out. All right, I'll switch to the Edit page. I'll bring the 3D demo clip down into the timeline. I'll take a moment to render this out so I can play it back to you at its proper speed. Here's the finished product. This is basic 3D, but I hope you learned a lot of useful techniques to help get you started. Thanks for watching.